there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio with another solo mode review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the 100 Torii from designer Scott Caputo and publisher Pencil First Games. I'm not going to go into a heavy rules overview for this game. If you want to see how it plays, take a look at Zee Garcia's review for the game, for the base game. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video below. What I want to do is focus on any component changes, rules changes, and the solo gaming experience. So we'll head over to the table here in just a moment. I'll talk about those changes and then I'll come back for my final thoughts. Okay, so there's a few changes regards to components that you're going to find in the solo game of the 100 Torii, and I've got this kind of set up here. These character achievement tiles and the enclosure achievement tile, those are not going to be used. So these get removed from the game. You don't need them in the solo game. Also, you're going to take 6 of these random tiles and remove those from the game. So you're going to have 6 less tiles that you're working from. Only 36 tiles are going to be used. What is added primarily is this solo board. Okay, this is the board that you're going to use to kind of keep track of what's happening with the AI opponent that you're going to be working against. And it lays out in pretty nice detail what the changes are and gives you a little bit of iconography that takes a little bit to wrap your mind around, but not too terribly much. So as far as what's added and removed, that's it. You remove those 6 tiles, remove those character and enclosure tokens, you set out this solo board, and you're good to go. It's set up as a regular 2-player game, but there are a few changes that are going to be made to the gameplay, and here's how that works. On your turn, first of all, you're going to start off with either 0 here, 1 here, or 2 coins, depending on the difficulty. If you want it to be in the beginner mode, you'll start with 2 coins. If you want it intermediate, you start with 1 coin. And if you want to make it really tough on yourself, you start with 0 coins at the beginning of the game. The AI doesn't start with any type of token. So then, what you're going to do, which is slightly different than the regular game, is you're going to randomly draw 3 tiles. You're going to have 3 tiles that you're looking at, and you choose one to place yourself, and the other 2 have to go to your AI opponent, who is Onatsu the Pilgrim, okay? When you place your tile, it works exactly the same as in the multiplayer game as far as how you gain your tokens. So, let's say, for example, I really wanted to get this token right here. I'd place this down and I'd get 1 token. And again, I'm not going to go into the rules, but basically because this is 1 space away, I get the one token. Now, these 2 tiles have to go to the AI. Now, honestly, I probably would not have chosen that one, but I want you, just for the purposes of illustration, to see how this works. So with these 2 tiles, there's only 1 icon on them. So I don't have a choice to make as far as which column they're going to go into. This one has to go into the rock column, and this one has to go into this little bowl column, okay? Because that's the corresponding symbol here. So I've played mine and I've placed these 2. Now, there are potential actions that can happen based upon the tiles that you place in the different rows. In this case, I placed a blue Torii tile there. And so what that's going to do, it tells me right here, is I have to discard 2 of my little tokens. Had I gained any tokens in that round, I would have had to have gotten rid of them. So, for example, let's say it didn't matter. Let's say I'd chosen this little bowl and I'd gotten 1 of these tokens on my turn. If I placed that there, I would have to get rid of it. Even though I only had 1, I would get rid of it. If I had 2, I have to get rid of those 2. So that's how it works for the the blue gate. If I had instead placed a red gate tile here, and I wouldn't cover that up, I'm just showing you that for illustration purposes. Instead, what I do is I would have to give a character tile for that particular row. So right there, they would get 4 points because I placed that red Torii gate there. If instead I had placed a tile that has 2 gates on it, okay, in this case, let's say I'd put this here instead of either of those, or they could have been there before, it doesn't matter. I'd place this here. I would have to do both of these things. I would have to give up 2 tokens and put a +4 character there. And then I would have to draw a second tile. Anytime that 2 Torii gates are showing, you have to randomly place another tile. So I would take one off the top, and this is another 2-tile gate. Now, they say that you don't keep doing this. You're only going to ever place one more. But depending on the difficulty mode, you either can choose to ignore the effect of those gates and you're just placing another tile out, or take the effect of both of those gates. If you want to play on hard mode, you're placing out a third tile, and then in this case, you'd be giving up a 4-point character token there and losing 2 more tokens yourself if you had them. So you can see that could be a potentially brutal placement. Now, if you only have 2 gate tiles to choose from, which is rare, you know, that could be a really tough turn for you, but it's something that you have to account for. And you're going to continue to do this, taking 3 tiles, placing 1 for yourself, and putting the other 2 out there, and giving Onatsu the appropriate points and tiles for those. So, the other thing you have to keep in mind is that if you ever place 2 tiles in a particular row, then other things are going to happen. Let's find one here. Let's say I'd place 2 in the cat row. When there are 2 to choose from, so I'm doing very suboptimal things just for the purposes of illustration. When you have 2 icons, you can choose which row they go into. So I could either put this into the cat row or the bridge row. Well, in this case, I would very likely put it into the bridge row because I don't want to have a bunch of tiles. But just to show you, if I put 2 tiles in a row, they're going to get 5 points of that particular type of, and I didn't have one of those ready for me. Let me hunt through the box. Here we go. They'd get one of these. They'd get a 5-point in the cat. Okay? If 4 were to get there, that would flip over and they'd have 10 points. If a row is completely full, then nothing else is going to happen. However, let's say a row is completely full and you get, let's say the cat was full, and you get this tile. You can't choose to go into the cat row just because you want to avoid putting any other points. If there were less than 4 in the bridge row, you would have to put it there. They don't give you that option. So it's very difficult to mitigate the different points that the AI is going to get. So you go through this, you continue to place 1 tile for yourself, 2 for the AI opponent, and if you've got more points than Onatsu at the end of the game, you win. If not, the AI wins. So there is a clear win-loss condition in this particular solo variant of the game. That's basically the difference between the solo mode and the regular mode of the 100 Torii. However, there's a couple of other little things I wanted to point out for you. Some of the rules changes slightly for the particular characters that you've got. So, for example, the samurai, which is this little character here, there we go. The samurai costs 2, and now you can place it on a particular column there, and now for that round only, you don't place any tiles in that row. So that's a way for you to potentially keep from placing a particularly nasty tile in a row if you've got no other options. So you can also play characters just like in the normal game. However, you can only ever use each character twice. So let's say you were playing this character, you can get their powers once, pay for them, get their powers once, and then one other time in the game you can do so. Otherwise, that's it. You can only use each character twice. So samurai is slightly different. The vendor is slightly different as well, in that in the vendor you pay for its usage, and then you draw 3 tiles. You return one of the 3 to the bottom of the deck and draw a new one. So if you had maybe drawn a double tile that you felt like you had to give to the AI, you might throw that one to the bottom and draw a new one. So that's the difference slightly to those 2 characters. Otherwise, the character powers stay the same. And that's the general difference in setup and gameplay rules for the solo variant of the 100 Torii. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea on the differences in the solo mode for 100 Torii between that and the regular game. So, what do I think of the game as a solo experience? First of all, I like to talk about the setup and teardown. It's a small game, it plays relatively quickly, and so I want a game that's going to set up and tear down quickly. And generally speaking, it does. There are a large number of tokens that you kind of need to set up and get arranged, but it's not too onerous. It's it's fine for the amount of time that you're playing the game. It's maybe a little bit more components than I would like to be dealing with in a short game like this, but nothing that's too out of the ordinary. So in terms of the setup and teardown, it's pretty reasonable for the type of game that it is. When it comes to rules, I think that the rulebook does a very good job of laying out those specific differences between the solo game and the traditional game. I like that it puts it in a distinct area of the rulebook. The rules are clear. I never felt that there was any real ambiguity to be found there. I mean, I understood pretty quickly what the differences are. And the game plays relatively similarly. I think you saw that when I was showing off the components. The actual structure of the game is relatively similar. There's going to be a few adjustments and changes for the solo game, and the rulebook does a good job of laying those out in a clear way with good examples. That's always important. When they're describing something that's different, if you can give me an example, I'm going to definitely appreciate that, and the rulebook does a good job at that. So, the overall solo experience, what do I think? Well, it's interesting. When I was playing the multiplayer game, I was wondering, am I going to prefer this more as a solo game? Because I didn't love it as a multiplayer game. I thought it was fine. I thought it was okay, but it didn't really knock it out of the park for me. And so I was thinking, I wonder if I'll like this better as a solo game, maybe as more of a puzzle type of a thing. The bottom line is that I don't really like it that much more as a solo game than I do as a multiplayer game. Maybe slightly more. And the reason is this. When you're playing solo, you've got that one core decision that you're making, which is I'm drawing these 3 tiles, and I'm going to keep 1 for myself, and I'm going to give 2 to my AI opponent. Oftentimes, what I felt happening was that I had a choice that had less to do with what I wanted to do for myself, what was going to be best for me, and more of, okay, what are the 2 tiles I don't want to give to the AI? And that seems like a subtle difference, and it is a very valid decision point. It can be agonizing at some points, but it's not necessarily fun. I don't always like that feeling of, okay, well, I don't really want this tile for myself, but I definitely don't want to give these 2 tiles to the AI. It's an odd thing to describe, but I want to, when I'm making a choice for me, feel good about the tile that I'm choosing for myself. And oftentimes I didn't. I felt like, okay, I'm choosing this tile by default only because I don't want to give it to the AI. It's not the best one for me. I don't feel really good about it. I don't feel like I'm being clever in placing this tile here. I'm putting this tile here because I can't give it to the AI. It's not a very satisfying decision for me personally to make. And so that was a little bit bothersome. The other issue that I found as I've played the solo game a few times is that I tended to play the same way. I felt like if I had any chance of being successful, what I needed to do was basically build out a long path that extended throughout time. I wasn't really varying where my paths were going. I was having to stick to one long path that had a whole bunch of gates so that I could, on one tile placement, build up a whole bunch of tiles. I felt like that was the only chance I had to be even competitive with the AI. And although that's a perfectly valid strategy, I don't want to feel like I have to do that every time to have any chance. And maybe it's that I didn't play the game very well. Maybe I haven't played it enough to really explore different ways of being competitive. But in the 4 or 5 solo games I've played, I have felt kind of hamstrung in going with that one strategy because when I didn't try it, I got just destroyed. And so that's something that was, again, a little bothersome to me. I didn't ever feel like I was in real control of my strategy. I felt like I was just constantly worrying about what I was giving the AI. So overall, it's a fine game, a nice looking game. The aesthetics are beautiful, a small box, a quick play time, not bad setup and teardown, very good rules. But the overall solo experience just kind of felt lacking to me. And for that reason, I'm going to be giving the solo game of the 100 Torii a 6 out of 10. Thank you so much for your time as always, and have a great day.